Well, today we'll be talking about elevating your leadership and a conscious or intentional approach to helping your employees develop theirs. In addition, we'll be talking about the habits of the most successful leaders. We'll be talking about core leadership capabilities, including the art of communication, the power of creating meaningful connections, and then finally, I'll tie that into core values. So let me officially introduce myself. I'm Amanda Karst, COO at AO People Partners, and we really help not only elevate leadership among and within a team, but also help transform cultures within an organization. I've had the great joy of working with some phenomenal leaders, some not so phenomenal leaders, and some in between. So let me just start by sharing one of my stories of a leader that I really admire. And hint, hint, this is an opportunity for you to be thinking of the same. And that is our co-founder and chairman, Ed Ofterdinger. Ed is a longtime CEO in a professional services accounting firm. And for years, it was his number one mission and passion to really integrate, embed, live all of the principles of leadership development, not only for himself, but for that of his people. Doing so, he had to tie everything on a daily basis back to their higher purpose, back to their mission and vision. He starts our meeting with, why are we here? What are we trying to achieve? Will that help us achieve this? And he wrote a LinkedIn article not so recently called Carefrontation. He really believes in feedback and providing feedback or confronting some of those challenging conversations deeply with care. So this is my story on that. I gave a talk at Georgetown University, and Ed comes up to me after and says, so how do you think that went? I said, pretty good. I lied. And he said, well, they say that you can really light up a room, Amanda, and I didn't see that today. And I can help. And so after that, I took a facilitation course and I committed to practice, practice, practice. And that's why I'm here with you today. Our other co-founder, Catherine Allen, carries the enormity of our vision so that someday people development will be incentivized and recognized form of social contribution, but more tangentially and tactically, that we inspire and create environments for conscious people development. So with that said, I want you to think about one of those leaders that comes to your mind when I say a great leader. Think about some of those attributes. And as you do that, I also want to make a quick note that both Ed and Catherine co-wrote this book, Conscious, Capable, and Ready to Contribute. With that said, in our time together, we're going to talk about successful leaders understand their role. They understand what it means to be a leader, and they understand the responsibility that they carry. 2, they identify the core people capabilities, those capabilities that are critical for the successful execution, not only of their organizational objectives, but their mission, their values. And then lastly, I will sprinkle throughout 8 healthy habits that all leadership folks really have in common. So let's get started. All right, understanding the role of leadership. Let's take a look at what that might look like. So we have this saying at AO of leaders must own, model, and drive not only the culture, but the development agenda, the business agenda, the strategy. They must own their own development journey. So there's no being bashful here. There's vulnerability here. This is what I'm working on. And it's saying it out loud. I mean, let's face it, in all organization, there is some hierarchical structure that creates some power dynamic. And imagine in a school where the leaders, the faculty, the students are learning that it is safe to not only own where they are, but also say out loud what they're working on. So for me, one of the things that I was working on was courageous authenticity. I knew that to be a successful leader, I needed more of myself, more of that vulnerability into the workspace. If I wasn't willing to do it, my team wouldn't be willing to do it. And so let's face it, learning and growing is uncomfortable. We're asked to stretch. We're asked to admit the things that we don't know. And that creates some fear. But when I model for my staff what I'm working on, it provides them permission. So imagine we're back in that school where the senior most leaders admit they don't know something. Imagine how that empowers the staff and the students to say, I don't understand. This is something I want to work on. Not only is it creating that culture of accountability because everyone is owning it, but you're recognizing that even if you're on different parts on that path, you're on the path together. What does it mean to really model and drive? So describing this not only is learning out loud, but it's the power that comes with when you are observing others and in a leadership position. It is your role, right? It is incumbent on you to model and drive the culture that you strive to create, that you strive to evolve, that you strive to maintain. And when you're seeing a leader learn real time, that creates a sense of safety for their staff and admiration and respect and trust. And so we all know that all of those things are a two-way street, and without them, things start to break. When it comes to driving the culture, leaders need to take on the responsibility to make sure that not only is the leadership culture principles, the desired leadership culture norms embedded in the day-to-day, but we need to see it in the mission. We need to see it in the core values. Imagine if your core values in a learning institution don't have learning and growth. Imagine if they do have learning and growth, but you never thought that that also included yourself and your faculty. You're missing the mark of it. The senior leaders in an organization need to ask to be held accountable. So back to Catherine. One of the things that she drives in our culture is a commitment and mindset to growth. Well, she knows it's so important for us that she models that and drives it. She comes up to me and says, Amanda, this is one thing that I'm working on. Will you ask me in a month to make sure that I'm still working on it? And so she models within our organization what it means to be accountable. And to me, that sounds backwards. Like, wait, what are you talking about? This is my boss asking me to hold her accountable? Well, then there's the ripple effect, right? She asked me, I asked my direct reports, and so on. And so if you were struggling with the reverse, that your senior leaders aren't accountable, model it for them. Start by asking. If we look at leadership and understand it as a daily practice, I want to ask you to consider these questions. What does owning my personal development as a leader mean to me? And in what ways have I committed to my development journey? How do I model to my team how I learn and develop as a leader? Third one, what would be the benefit to our organization if people development was a core value? And the last one, what is our vision for developing our people? What would be the benefit to our organization if people development was a core value? The reality is that this has become a full-on expectation. There is no option here. There's no option to say no. Organizations, in order to thrive, must create a culture, an environment that fosters individual growth and development. It's a non-starter for most. As those entering the workforce are younger and younger and more committed and even stronger about what fuels them, They're demanding that you invest in them. So here's my habit number one, and that I'm sprinkling in: hire great people. I've seen organizations hire people for what they know and fire them for who they are. In 2020, I worked with a client. They had some firsthand experience on how costly a mishire can be. They hired someone because of their technical competence, because, they had all the things, right, on the resume. But when it came down to it, they ended up letting them go for their mindsets, their behaviors, for who they are. Not that they were bad, they just weren't not a culture fit, a culture add. They weren't additive to the culture. And the core values indicated to us what were some of the core competencies that an organization or for a person within that organization ought to have to be successful in this role. We took those core values, mapped them to skills or core competencies, behaviors, identified those key behavior indicators, created then a rubric for that, depending on the team and the needs of the team, right? We might have weighted one of the mind skills, maybe emotional intelligence, higher than. If there was a gap within that team, they were all fantastic communicators, but they lacked the empathy and compassion to be able to collaborate more effectively. And so when you take your initiatives from start to end around that employee life cycle, beginning with attraction, hiring, recruiting, onboarding, and instill in that process the idea that as an organization, we're committing to you. In that commitment, we want to make sure that we are right for you. And so it's a two-way interview. Hiring for core values, understanding what those core competencies are reflected in the core value. So if I can jump ahead to core people capabilities, when you're talking about the talent strategy and making sure that the talent strategy maps back to the business strategy, you really need to think about, so what are the skills that our people need to be effective and successfully execute on what we're called to be? Whether that is grow from here to there, whether that is grow geographically, whether that is grow the number of students, or whether that is embedded in your mission and vision. And so what we found is that when it comes to core people capabilities, we generally think about soft skills and hard skills, right? The hard skills being the technical skills, the things that you go for training and education on. The soft skills being more so interpersonal and behavioral skills. Now, those two buckets are great, but they do have limitations. They don't necessarily address the wholeness of the person, and they don't necessarily address the ability to integrate, be agile with the mission, to believe and exhibit the behaviors to really lift up your school's mission. So we came ahead with this idea that it's not new to ask about core people capabilities, but it might be new to ask what core people capabilities really matter in our organization and which are valued in our culture. AO People Partners has developed the core people capabilities, and we've divided it into 3 buckets: mind skills, people skills, and technical skills. Mind skills are really those skills that are embedded in the brain's cognitive ability. They're closely associated with learning and development. When we look at people skills, these are the interpersonal skills or behavioral skills and abilities. We know this as self-awareness, knowing ourselves, the ability to communicate and relate to others. And then technical skills, knowledge and abilities to perform tasks within a specific field. So let's go back to the poll. When I asked the question, what soft skills are essential to effective leadership? Well, let's see here. It was loud and clear. based on your responses, that listening was right up there and the top of the list, as was compassion, empathy, growth mindset, creativity. So let's unpack active listening. Good thing about active listening is that there are so many facets about it. There are communication skills, and communication skills includes not only active listening, but it also includes effective speech and effective writing. So here's one of those resources that I mentioned about listening. This is by Kate Murphy. You're Not Listening. What you're missing and why it matters. She takes the premise of we're all talking above each other. No one is listening to us, and we're not listening either. So her book is pretty darn amazing and has many strategies to improve active listening. I just wanted to focus on these three. First and foremost, stay calm and focused. I know it sounds like a mantra that we've seen everywhere, stay calm and, right? But the point here is when you're staying calm and focused, you're grounded and you're feeling things not only with your ears, you're listening with all senses. You're sensing the energy of the person. You're looking at the body language of whoever is talking. You're listening for what not only is being said, but what is unsaid. I like to say that listening is really one of my superpowers. And as a coach, it's critical. It's critical to be able to understand the context of where a client might be at. So it's critical to understand the context of where a colleague might be at. What's going on? And it's a little bit analogous to someone comes into the office or into school with a cast on their foot. You know immediately what's wrong, right? And oh my gosh, what happened? What's the story? As opposed to maybe someone is struggling with a mental health issue and they come in and you sense that their energy is off. You ask them what's wrong, and the answer is nothing. You are listening with more than your ears. You're listening with your heart. So to be a good listener, you also have to be really curious about people, ask questions just enough to convey that you understand. With number two, it's super important that good listeners ask questions that don't have a point of view embedded in them. It's not, don't you think you should do this? Right? A good listener doesn't take that approach. They don't take center stage. They don't make it about themselves. I want to share a study with you. Sociologist Charles Derber of Boston College says that there are two basic types of conversational responses: the support response and the shift response. So imagine a colleague comes in and said, oh my God, you know those unit tests that the students worked so hard to prepare for? I lost them for a week. And you could have said, oh yeah, that's happened to me. Well, immediately you've made it about yourself. Instead, asking a question as simple as, well, where did you find them? Really invites the other person to share more of their story. A good listener is exceptional at the support responses. So I had a client and she was really struggling. I listened to what she was saying and what she wasn't saying. And through some powerful questions like, these are some of my go-tos. Tell me more. What's next? How does it feel? Where are you feeling that? She was able to discern that her two most important core values, this is personal core values, was connection and contribution. And she decided that where she was no longer serving her. And it was through that power of listening that we helped ease into that answer, helped her understand what she was really called to do next. And now she has the job of her dreams. She is thriving, but she wasn't also able to listen to herself. because we all do this. We have this little voice inside of our head, and this is one of the things that I've worked on, right? It's not always easy. You have this inner voice of, oh yeah, me too. I can relate to that. Oh my, you didn't do that, right? All of the things. What am I going to say next to like really impress these people? Are they going to think that I know my stuff? Constant dialogue. Got to turn it down. Worked really hard on being present, making sure that my energy is in a place that feels grounded, that feels really true to myself, rather than already thinking 5 steps ahead. If I'm thinking 5 steps ahead, then I'm not here for you. If I'm already thinking about my response, then I'm not here for you. So, fighting this tendency, you'll hear more of what the speaker has to say. And active listening will come with greater ease. Habit number 2, communicate with clarity. Research says that it takes 10 times the amount of communication for stakeholders to begin to grasp a leader's vision. So I did a little pulse survey before our session. High-performing school leaders begin every communication with the why. They clearly communicate who they are as an organization and where they are going, right, in every stakeholder communication. This communicating with clarity builds the trust, the common language, and alignment in an organization. So, as if that wasn't challenging enough, everything that we just covered on active listening, there's one thing I would be remiss if I didn't mention. You also need to listen to yourself when you're speaking and check in with your audience. And if you're not getting feedback from them, you need to ask, do I understand? Do you understand? And the one thing that I want to say in terms of a healthy leadership habit, this is number 3 if you're counting, is to connect with others. Now, it's great when people believe in the leader, but it's even more powerful when the leader believes in people, right? And you do this through empathy and compassion. High-performing leaders don't live on their own agenda. They know that they are in service of their team, and they show up for the people because they know that excellence in a school, excellence in a community is not built on programs or products. It is built on people. And it is vital to create and maintain, to build those human connections. On the growth mindset piece, I wanted to offer this tip. Intentionally develop people. I was speaking to someone this morning, and they shared with me when I asked them if they had any tips. They said one thing that they falsely assumed all this time is that their staff would be interested in the same things that they're interested in, learning the same things that they're learning. And she had it all wrong. She understood that professional development needs to be aligned with the intention of growth for not only the individual, but the organizational needs as well. And so that might show up differently for everyone. So we've covered 1 through 4. I'll move on to 5, empower people. The key to any leader's success is knowing what their superpower is and where their gaps are. I'll take you back to Catherine. Catherine is indeed this beautiful holder of the essence of our vision and mission. She knows that she is not the executor of those aspirations. She has folks on her team that really operationalize and bring to life the mission and vision. She knows what the areas are that she's learning on. In fact, her one big goal right now is to achieve results. And she needs others to be able to show her how to do that, move from the space of visioning into the space of actualizing and achieving. And this was a quote that I read. As a leader of a charter school, you are responsible for everything. I see you all smiling. but you're not required to do it all. I know it might feel that way on days. You're not required to do it all. And so having those individuals on your staff as part of your leadership team to really help scale leadership among your organization will help take you out of that chaotic state and overwhelmed state to start really training and developing the next generation of leaders within your organization. Habit number 6, set expectations. So I spoke with a principal from Sarasota at yesterday's welcome reception, and she shared with me that only the teachers that were the good teachers were the ones that were reading her emails and her memos. And she said all that really did was have her lose credibility with those high performers and have something to talk about for the low performers. So this is what I reminded her of. High performing leaders actively seek feedback from their highest performing direct reports so they can make decisions based on their best people. So here's a tip. Prior to establishing any rule or sending out any communication, think about what is the true purpose of implementing this rule or sending out the communication. Will this rule or policy actually accomplish this? How will my most positive and productive people feel about it? That's the question. So back to Ed's take on feedback and carefrontation. You can't establish a rule to correct the behaviors of the underperforming. I know it's challenging, but you need to directly carefront those underperformers. This might throw you all for a loop in terms of evaluating your experience. What I have to say about this is you might think, I'm not going to ask my team about my performance as leader. Won't that make me look weak? The contrary. It is the contrary. It's all right because they already know. They already know your strengths and your weaknesses. Asking them will help build the trust and respect needed to be successfully in the position of leader within your school. And then the last habit here, value time. We all know that time must be respected and treated as a precious commodity. So anytime you are with your staff, just keep this in mind. Why are we here? And how do I inspire them to come back tomorrow? So let me leave you with this, a bit of a call to action. Reflect on these 8 habits of highly effective leaders. Think about, is there an area that you need to address first? Come up with a plan, a goal, and an accountability partner. That accountability partner might be in this room. If you need help with that plan or executing on it, I'm sure that there will some new friend or colleague that you've met will be happy to stay connected. When you focus on growing yourself and you embrace a culture in which you commit consciously to developing your people, you're not only contributing whole people to the school, to the students, to your communities, but you're also contributing more capable people to society. Thank you.